What's going on, traders? Welcome back to another video with Digital Goatz Academy. I'm your host, Antoine Farrar, as always. And today is Sunday, so you know that means this is our weekly review where we pretty much go over what transpired in the market last week. So without further ado, let me go ahead and pull up the chart. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about obviously indices. If you've been tuning into our channel, you know we primarily discuss that. But if you're tuning in today for your first time, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button on your way in or on your way out. It's definitely greatly appreciated. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so last week was a bear market. We did have buying opportunities, but ultimately the past couple of weeks the market has been trying to sell off as far as when it pertains to indices, right? So these were areas that we have talked about in the past. Let me get rid. Well, I need that up. Now we've talked about price possibly going. Now I did have like areas that I was looking for price to return to and then buy off from. And one of them was one of the areas right here with S&P 500. So that's around, and you can see we have a little bit of rejection. Let me go ahead and scale out. So what I had ultimately thought, which I still believe, is that we were ranging right here. As you can see, we came from this bullish run after we hit April. April, we've been bullish, bullish, like beyond bullish. And each time it's just been each sell has been an opportunity to buy up, right? Only now when we got to pretty much June, you would kind of say the end of May going into June is where we started seeing sellers start, presenting themselves and trying to force the market down. Now, me, ultimately, I'm still looking at this as a range and that this is the correction that the market is trying to do in order to keep going. And then maybe next year, price will probably try to like push down lower than these areas. But S&P and NASDAQ, they've been making new highs early this year. So the fact that they're still ranging, to me, even though we don't want to see that, that does make sense because the one thing that I did state that is that I believe that S&P and NASDAQ are going to range and then they're going to allow US 30 to catch up and then we're going to start seeing new highs break with US 30, Dow Jones, whatever you know it as, and then go back on a bull run until we get to next year where normally we expect the market to be brought down like the beginning of the year, right? So I'm looking at this as still as a range. There's been opportunities on both sides of the spectrum, but we're finally at an area where we identified that price could possibly push back down to in order to buy back up, right? And the reason why I even mentioned this, even why I even mentioned this area, is specifically because I identified this imbalanced candle right here. I said that, hey, this is an imbalanced candle. This candle is making me skeptical of the market continuously, pushing up. And I mentioned that. I said that, man, the way it's being tested is kind of crazy. It's unorthodox as far as like what the market structure is supposed to be. And now we have where the market said, hey, I'm going to reclaim that area that you all were discussing for quite some time, which here we are. I'm glad we're here now than like later on in the year. So that still boosts my confidence to say that this is still a bull market, ultimately what I'm looking at. So if we go back from where are we at? Where's Sunday? This is Friday. Oh yeah, right here. So this is Sunday. As you can see, we closed below the entire week, right? So we are below Sunday's open, but we also below the entire week for last week's market, which, I mentioned that between either this past week that we just passed or this week coming up, buyers will probably start to resurface and we'll start to see, bulls start to show themselves more in this market. That's at least what I'm expecting based off of what the technicals were telling me. Like I said, I do know that price was pushing down and each time that price was creating these areas is creating a false narrative in order to bring down the market to attack liquidity. Now we're at this imbalance candle. Let me get rid of this because information is useless. Now we're at this imbalance candle for the daily. So let me fib it up real quick. Is that a wick right there? No, it's not a wick. Okay, so you know when we pull out the fib, what it's ultimately trying to tell us is the percentage that price pulled back or the percentage that price is testing currently whatever candle or whatever trend that we have the fib on, right? So you do have to know a little bit about Fibonacci, not be an expert at it. You just have to know what these levels mean for us, right? So we did hit as low as 618. We rejected that, and then price closed above 50%. We still need obviously a bull candle to be produced on the opposite side. But man, this looks like the opportunity for a morning star pattern if we get a bull candle to open up for Sunday, which I hope that'll be amazing. So two things that led me to even identify this area for a possible buy up, right? Is that one, this was a previous high. I always talk about resistance whenever we're creating an uptrend, whenever after price has establishes its level of support, we normally need it to correct itself by testing what? The high. That normally continues the uptrend. So we need price to break out of a level of resistance or break out a rooftop, come back, test that rooftop, turn it into a floor. So we have to turn it into support. So that's why we need for this daily candle price to either buy up here or turn bullish. You know what I'm saying? We don't need an aggressive bull candle, but we do need a bullish candle to close on the daily time frame, at least for what we're looking at based off of this position right here, which this is where I was looking at the buy up. So this is why I came to the conclusion that I was buying up here. This is resistance, not to mention if we scale down on the 4 hour time frame, it's an imbalanced candle. But we're on the daily, so let's stay there because we can see that there's imbalance on the daily as well, which I probably should have just marked up the daily time frame instead of the 4 hour because you can kind of miss moves or be a little bit off because you're not on the proper time frame that the visuals are showing you, right? So we did reject 50% if you want to count this, but we closed above 382. We still need a candle to open, but based off the Fibonacci, if basically the next candle turns bullish or we start getting bullish activity from Sunday into Monday, this establishes is that okay, this is the first point of contact that we have. So we do have support on the daily, and as you can see, it's only been doing like lower highs. These highs, I mean, higher lows. Excuse me. It's only been doing higher lows, right? These highs, higher low right here, higher low right here, and hopefully this turns into a higher low, which will subsequently create what? A trend for us. That would be a new trend starting if price is respecting exactly what we want to see and then bring a buy to the upside. I'm telling you, I've seen this formation with indices before, so that's why I'm not turning into a seller just yet. I'm telling you, I know it's like aggressive, especially since we got a new Federal Reserve president and all these changes with the war that's going on. What else? Possible tariffs hitting again. All this like negative negative news that's going to be filtered into the market. So I can understand it definitely looks like that price is trying to create a bit downtrend. But I think that this is, like I said, I think that this is our correction. And I've seen a formation like this with indices before. It'll make you believe that price is selling and bring out the mother of all bull candles that you've ever seen. So that's what we're projecting still, especially when it comes to S&P. So this is what I'm thinking for S&P. Obviously, I'll be a little bit more detailed when it comes down to market breakdown on what transpires between now and then going on a Tuesday. But we just have to wait until the market opens up today at 6 p.m. But I'm glad that we're here. This is where we were. These are the areas we were identifying. It's just that price took its sweet ass time to come back down here. But now that we're here, I'm looking at us to still remain in our uptrend. So I'm still bullish. Anything lower than yeah, we're looking at possibly a bear market because this right there created resistance. So if price does continue to try to push lower, then yeah, we're probably starting the cycle of a bear market. But again, we still have areas that price could create support at, like right here. I can see price coming a little bit lower to establish support. And that would coincide with what I think might happen to NASDAQ. Now, remember with NASDAQ, outside of what we discussed last week, we did say that price was probably going to buy up, right? We said that price was going to buy up and that if price was going to buy up, and we were going to continue to sell off to target this area down here, we would come up either to test 50% or 618. Did we do that? Yes, we did. So we are at a previous high, but NASDAQ is a little bit more sporadic than its brother and sister, right? With US against US 30 and S&P. But we identified this pattern. We've seen this pattern present itself over and over. We identified this like when the market was still selling off. So whenever we have consolidation that's moving upward, we'll have the breakout. You'll have a like a shallow pullback or a momentary retest that does a test back into the high immediately, and then price will go on its rampage and do a full return until it wants to come back to either the high or come back within the pattern that was made. I mean, the consolidation pattern. So what we were looking at is that price could target this area. We've been identified this. We talked about this. This is why I was always skeptical on how the buys were, but when price wasn't showing us like that it wasn't turning around, and I had to respect that price was at this point continued still buying up and not trying to push back down until we got up here. Here's where I remember. Here's where pretty much price told me that it was selling off, and then I ignored it, and here we are now. But we identified these areas, and again, if this is pushing us back down to this consolidation zone, this is going to be the pullback that we need in order to push the market higher. So before the end of the year, we may get a new high within indices. If not, what's going to happen is that S&P and NASDAQ will probably create resistance up here, and this will be our resistance after we get past like Christmas for the market to be pushed down. You know what I'm saying? So I'm almost positive that once we get up here, if we don't push past this before we get closer to the holidays, then more than likely this is where we actually start creating our resistance to bring the market down next year. But we'll see what happens. You know, I don't like predicting that far into the future. This is just things that I think about, you know what I'm saying, when it's like I'm trying to see the overall direction, what the possibility is based off of technical analysis and a little bit of sentimental analysis, things that I've seen that either shifts the market or propels it up or shoots it down, whatever the case may be. So we're finally targeting, if we don't push all the way back down here, like I said, we are at support. So I could see price buying up from here, but again, we'll still have to wait for a little bit more data. There was a gap that obviously the market is targeting now. So this is why I said it's important that we leave some of our markups, things like this markup, you know, I didn't know it was going to be relevant, but you see how relevant it is now. So it's not like I don't know why price is trying to come down here. Well, I don't know why price is trying to come down here, but as far as like the technicals, it's not a surprise that, oh, it's targeting that. You see what I'm saying? Like it's targeting the fucking gap. So we should expect that, okay, if it's going to fill that gap, that means price is going to probably try to push down a little bit lower, slightly lower. If not, it's basically testing this gap in order to buy back up. So I just wanted to point that out. But yeah, NASDAQ, I'm uncertain about it still. But like I said, if we push down to this area, this is exactly where I was looking for the buy zone. So if we are going lower, this does present a bear opportunity. You know what I'm saying? If price is going lower. But again, I don't want to jump the gun because we did pretty much collect liquidity right here by bringing this candle and by bringing this candle for both this wick right here, but also this gap. So let me just scale in. Let me see. That's why I said it doesn't look like it right now, but price like gaps up, then this is probably trying to tell us this is our support area, and we actually won't come all the way back down to this consolidation zone. But again, NASDAQ kind of has a mind of its own. So I would actually shoot for NASDAQ targeting that area since we're so close than actually trying to buy up from here. and then S&P and US 30 might be the ones that's trying to buy up, or it's just US 30, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, we'll see when the market opens up, but yeah, this doesn't look like yes, we've created the sequence of a downtrend, but price has yet to break out of structure as far as when we're talking about support. This is our last level of support, and yes, it could dip down a little bit lower, and that still validates itself as support, but it hasn't truly broken structure in order to say like, yeah, up here. But like I said, for this overall move, it hasn't truly broken structure for us to say that price is trying to sell off. The only thing we know is that if we are pushing down, price could push back down to this area, and this is where we would look for possible buys if we don't get a flip when the market opens up at 6 o'clock, right? So that's what I'm looking at for Nasdaq. Like I said, I'm not really a heavy Nasdaq trader, and especially after I got punched in the face with these last couple moves. Yeah, I think I'm gonna just stick with US 30. You know what I mean? That might sound crazy. That might sound crazy because like I trade US 30, but to me, NASDAQ is like gold. It has like bitch-like behavior, excuse my French. So well, I wouldn't say last, but US 30, it's the last of the big three. So y'all know I have like a bunch of markups already. Like this information serves me. Of course, I could probably delete a couple of things, but this information serves me. So again, when you're first stepping up to your analysis, one, I hope you're still tracking your trade, like whatever currency pair you're trading in. And again, it does depend on what type of trader you are. So I try to stay in the know of what the trades I'm looking at, right? So this right here, this is where it goes into knowing possible patterns, right? I don't know if this is going to happen, but now that I'm looking at it on the weekly after we cleared out all my markups, it does look like a pattern that I'm somewhat familiar with where price will bring like three bear candles and then shoot a aggressive bull candle on the opposite side. I forgot what pattern, what's that called as far as like the candlestick pattern, but if you do know, especially on YouTube, drop it in the comment section. If you know on my Zoom, drop it in the comment section as well. I think that, yeah, I think that this is the pattern that's probably about to form because again, I'm still bullish. I'm not changing my narrative unless I see a little bit more. And that might sound crazy, but from where we've come from, like, yeah, to me, it's we shouldn't try to switch directions just because we see a little bit of bears start to show their ass in the market. You know what I'm saying? So we're looking at the weekly time frame. Currently, we actually closed above the low of Monday. Is this Monday? No, not Monday. Of June 29th. Yeah, so the end of June. So the end of June, yeah, so we pretty much rejected that as far as like how price closed. So we haven't closed below this entire month, I mean weekly candle right here, which is a good sign. But again, we still got to see how price opens up. There could be a gap down, which means that we are pushing down a little bit lower, but we'll figure that out once price opens up. I am still bullish. I do think that excuse me, I do think that the area that price was targeting was this overall resistance that we broke out of. So I do think that price is trying to still keep its tempo as far as like the uptrend. And you can see that we're still maintaining that trend. We didn't actually touch this trend, which again, we could drop a little bit lower. There's a lot of imbalance down here, but we didn't test this trend line, which normally, by the time we get to like the third or fourth touch, I expect price to break up out of that, but it just depends on where the breakout is at. This could be the fake out to push the market up. But I've already said that based off the weekly time frame, if I start to see a bull candle being shown, I think that price, or at least we see that we close bullish for the day for Sunday. I think that that's telling us that price is buying back up for sure at this area. So this was where the resistance was made. So, you know, we actually broke out of this area. Well, we pushed down. So this is where previous what am I trying to say? Rooftop was, right? So we pushed down here. This was the beginning of June. The beginning of June, we pushed down. I remember us creating this and, you know, feeling like that price wasn't going to come back to these levels. And I still don't think that, but this was the area that we broke out of. This was the major high that we needed to break out of. And what I think is is that price is testing that. We broke out of that, and now we're testing this high, this resistance, and we're turning it into support. Remember, we're on the daily time frame and weekly, so when we're looking for the support, it's probably going to be in the form of a swing low versus actually seeing the two touches that you want to see. So just pay attention to that and don't miss the opportunity for the continuation. But for US 30, I think that we're continuing. I think I had mentioned possibly bullish flag pattern being presented. So let's say, and I still do think that. I forgot what time frame we were looking on. I don't want to. I feel like I'm making that up. I feel like I'm forcing that. Nah, I don't see the bullish flag pattern. But as far as like the correction, yeah, this is like a correction to me. You know what I'm saying? So I still think that US 30 as well is ranging. And it has a lot more room to go up compared to S&P and Nasdaq. We haven't truly created resistance like S&P and Nasdaq have done. So if we are gonna create resistance, price would definitely need to come back up to this 53K area or as close as possible before we were to sell off again. That's what I'm looking at. But like I said, I'm just saying the possibility of price selling off. I'm looking at this as we're still in a bull market. We haven't broken any major lows. Like, yes, we've been correcting, but the only thing we've been doing is market structure. We broke out of a high. This is the major high that we came from. We even forced ourselves down right here to establish resistance. We test shallow, and now this is our major test. You know what I'm saying? And again, we have a lot more room that price could come down. I know my original area that I was looking for was this 945 zone. So we'll have to analyze the market this week to see if that's the case. If that is the case, this for sure is the buy zone. But like I said, I think that US 30 has established its high that it needed to, the test of the high that it needed to, and we're about to see buyers start to show themselves. Again, this is going off of like a lot of market sentiment that I experienced last year. I know when a major financial figure, such as the Federal Reserve President or President of the United States or the president of any country, they start to speak and the market gets brought down. That's normally intentional from what I've seen in my experience. It's normally intentional, bring the market down to appropriate support areas or appropriate demand areas, and we start scaling the market back up from there. So because we didn't do it last week, I'm very confident that this is going to be the week that we start to see buyers show themselves. But it may just be like, we accumulate the orders in order to buy up, and it's not like a very strong move. I hope it's a strong move, but we'll see. Last but not least, it is gold. So I know I discussed this with my group, and I think I discussed it with YouTube as well. So gold threw me for a loop. I am still bearish on gold. When you look at the overall time frame, gold has been bearish, and I think that just like what we were looking at with US 30, well, indices, right? This is its correction phase, right? So this is the market basically slowing down and going into some form of consolidation or just doing like a pit stop and throwing confusing analysis for both buyers and sellers. But I think when we look at the overall direction, we have been bearish, right? So when we've been bearish, we have to identify like how the market is moving the same way we see it on smaller time frames. So normally you would expect a pullback. You got your pullback right here and price created a gap. I thought that price was going to try to test that gap. Now, price could still try to test that gap, but I am going with what the market structure is showing me, right? What the board, what I'm reading on the board, right? This is resistance right here. Now, I did see this gap and I thought that, man, we might start selling from here. But I did mention that we might try to fill this gap, and we did. We filled this gap, and then we actually created resistance. Look, where? Look what we identified. What candlestick pattern is this? And this is where I gain the confidence where it's like I'm reading the board correctly because I'm identifying things that I know that should start selling the market. This is a morning star pattern. What do we know about a morning star? I mean, not a morning star, evening star pattern. What do we know about an evening star pattern? We know that it's the opposite of the morning star pattern, which means that morning star is for buyers. Evening star, think about it. The sun goes up in the morning, right? The moon goes down. I mean, the sun goes down in the evening, right? You know what I'm saying? So this is a bearish pattern because it's showing us going down. Please look this up if you don't already know what it looks like. And when you're looking at indices, these pop up a lot, and especially when you look at it on a higher time frame, it gives you a clear sign of direction. But you know, this is just a regular forex pair or a forex metal, so I don't want to call it regular, but compared to indices, it is regular, right? So resistance, this was resistance made, and I think I saw it on a smaller time frame. So where I ended up creating this line, it didn't look like this, but either way, we're still getting the same results that we need. What do we know about a morning star pattern, which is the buy version of this pattern? We know that price either needs to test a percentage of that pattern, or we need to test it 100% in order to establish structure. So with the evening star, we need either price to have test this 100%, so where this wick may be at or a little bit lower, in order to establish true resistance, or test it what? A percentage. This is the percentage of the pattern. I just wanted to point that out there. So when I look at this on a higher time frame, this is telling me what I want to see. You know what I'm saying? We just have to be patient enough to execute properly to see if price may try to test this again or what percentage of this candle is going to test. But yeah, I definitely think that sellers are in the market for gold, and I am targeting that 3,500 area. So this might be a sell that pushes us into next year, and then maybe like the following, maybe towards the end of next year, we might start getting buyers in the market. It just depends. I don't know what would influence that behavior, but as far as the technicals, to me, this looks sound. So we'll discuss more, like I said, on market breakdown, but that's all I got, traders. So it's about to be 5:30 my time, Eastern time. So we have 30 minutes before the market opens up. The Sydney and Tokyo, well, the Sydney session opens up and then we go into Tokyo, but just look at it overall that the market is open up, and then we'll establish some type of information or data once we get that open, and then we'll make sense of what's going on. But I am confident in what I'm seeing. So again, I'll address y'all later on. I'll address you traders later on in the week if there are any changes, or if basically my overall analysis was just faulty. Like I said, traders, that's all I got. I hope y'all make a lot of money this week. I hope this definitely helps. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on your way out. I'm Antoine Farrar, as always, signing off. Peace, traders.